kinsmen. The land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Oswash-speaking Yupi tribe, the Yamamutsun tribal band comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. Oh.
Thank you for that. Now we have Sarah Sephora Moser.
Yay!
My name is Sarah Sephora Moser. I serve as the rabbinic intern at Temple Bethel in El Paso. I stand before you to offer a prayer in memory of George Floyd and all the other BIPOC lives in this country taken by police. I want to name the privilege I hold as an American Jewish person with white skin. My ancestors were killed in the Holocaust and in pogroms in Eastern Europe, but I do not fear for my life every day in this country. But I'm a dedicated servant of the Most High, and I humbly trust that the words I offer are the prayer that's in your heart too. I invite you to replace the word God with whatever language feels aligned for you. Dear God, we gather before you today with immense gratitude for this day, for each breath we can take, for each moment we can spend on this holy, holy earth, for the sun and sky above us, for the solid ground below us, we thank you. And God, with our gratitude comes our grief, our tears, our anger, and our confusion over the continuous loss of Black lives in this country. God, please bless our gathering with peace. Bless each soul who has gathered here today with comfort for their fear, with deep, nourishing breaths. God, please aid our anxieties. From Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Ancestors, we read, "It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it." God, we accept the heavy yoke of labor in fighting for true justice in this country. Together we carry the weight and will continue to do the work as much as we possibly can in our lifetimes so that our children can see a world without the senseless death of people of color. And we refuse to cease this work. The Torah, the Hebrew Bible, teaches us that each human is created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. Each human contains within them a spark of the divine as each of us comes into this world and breathes our first holy breath granted to us by the ineffable. No human can lose this quality. Thus, a person who murders another is treated as though he has killed an entire universe, as if the murderer has killed God, God's self. What greater disrespect to our holy Creator than for someone to walk free after shooting dead an entire universe? In 1963, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel addressed an audience at the National Conference on Religion and Race. Rabbi Heschel said, "There is an evil which most of us condone and are even guilty of, indifference to evil. We remain neutral, impartial, not easily moved by the wrongs done unto other people. Indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. It is more universal, more contagious, and more dangerous. Dear God, let us never be indifferent in the face of evil. When we don't know what to do, let us walk out of our homes and into the streets. In memory of George Floyd, in memory of all the sacred Black lives that have been violently, painfully, and horrifically cut short We gather to grieve and to revolutionize. And God, in honor of all these precious lives who should have grown old, in honor of their families, their partners, their parents, and their children, we will not be silenced. We will not accept the excuses made by criminals whose paid leave is funded by our tax dollars. We will tear down harmful police organizations that serve to prevent accountability. We will support alternative conflict de-escalation and public mental health services for our family, friends, and neighbors who are endangered by a police visit. We believe a new paradigm of justice is possible in this country. We will continue to insist that Black lives matter in the face of the privilege, discomfort, and complacency of our national government. Dear God, let us continue to bless the memories of George Floyd and all other Black and brown lives who have been murdered at the hands of police. Please bless our gathering with peace and with power. Grant us the strength to continue on, and please, God, let the Black lives in this country live. And join me as we say, Amen.
Amen.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Our next person up, I'm almost embarrassed to introduce because if you lived in Santa Cruz any amount of time, you know who this person is. And I'd like to introduce Tammy Brown.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 yeah. Glory, glory. Now the war's not over, and victory isn't won. We will fight on till we finish, until all is done. We'll cry glory, 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 glory. We'll cry glory, yes, glory,
by now. Hello. That song was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I saw a lot of people felt the spirit. Thank you, Tammy. The next person would like to be introduced as everybody. So he's coming up to the mic now.
Oh, it's got to
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. I'm also George Floyd.
What?
I'm also the son of a black mother. And I'll be reciting a poem that was written by a black boy last year after George Floyd's murder. And his name is Ayodele Ayula. And it's called I Ain't Welcome Here. I walk down the street, and guess who I meet? The men in blue who are supposed to defend, but instead they chose to apprehend. They slap, punch, choke me red. They won't stop till I end up dead. Oh, stop, please, I can't breathe. I beg of you, just go and leave. My cries all disappear out of sight. I'll end up dead if I try to fight. His knee is up against my throat. No one can stop him, they're all too remote. My God, what country do I call this? A nation where the popo can just go bliss. At my expense, I kid you not. I'll be beaten, stepped on, or even shot. This nonsense must stop, but of course it won't. All I can do is scream, please don't, please don't, as I bleed here lying dead on the floor. I know I ain't welcomed here no more. And now I ask everyone to either take a knee or sit down. We're going to have a moment of silence for 9 minutes and 29 seconds in memory of George Floyd. George's life mattered. Imagine having a meeting.
Nine minutes, 29 seconds. Go by this game. Next, we have a poem, The Hill We Climb, by Amanda Gorman, by Kajiana, and Eva.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just ice.
And yet, the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we weathered and witnessed a nation that is broken, but simply unfinished.
We, the successes of a country and a time where a skinny black girl, descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a nation that is perfect.
We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us.
We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another.
We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried.
That we'll forever be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division.
Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made.
That is the promise to Glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it.
We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very, very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated.
In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We do not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour.
But within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us?
We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free.
We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation.
Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright.
So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left with. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-ringed hills of the west. We will rise from the windswept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution.
We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge, battered and beautiful.
When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. For the dawn blooms as we free it, for there is only light. If only we're brave enough to see it,
If only we're brave enough to be it.
Next we have Stephanie.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for the gracious invitation to share today and for your labor of love for the people. My name is Stephanie. I go by she, her. My Chinese name is Joan Zeeling. I'm a daughter to immigrants from Hong Kong, grew up in Fremont, California, graduated from UC Davis, and currently work as a Christian minister at UC Santa Cruz and Cabrillo College. I've been a resident of Santa Cruz for 3 years now, and I'm still cultivating a sense of home. Would my words today be an expression of grief, remembrance, and prayer for George Floyd and his family, and every family impacted by police violence and brutality. As a follower of Jesus, who also suffered and was killed at the hands of police and a system of power, the embodiment of my faith and pursuit of God's heart for justice includes the individual work of ethnic identity and the communal work of cross-cultural relationships towards justice and reconciliation, and the flourishing of Black lives. There's 3 things that I'm learning. Number 1 is about white supremacy. We have all been socialized into this and are all operating within the realities of and impact of this system. This is the system that we are resisting and fighting to undo. And when I say white supremacy, I'm referring to the system, not white people. However, the system in many ways does, in fact, protect white people at the expense of, very often, Black, Indigenous, queer, and other folks of color, as they are afforded different privileges and advantages. So there are power dynamics at play that we must analyze and pay attention to these intersections and how they impact us. In light of this year's heightened anti-Asian hate, the system of white supremacy tells anti-Asian and anti-Black narratives that sound like, quote, the way us Asians can be safe and secure is to maintain our position by looking down on other people of color and to stay close to whiteness. It can also sound like attacking whites is dangerous, but Asians are a safer target for my frustrations and resentments since they also treat us like trash. I personally found myself playing this game of oppression Olympics sometimes. This sounds like, oh, but I'm suffering more than so-and-so, or they're suffering more than me, or homophobia is worse than sexism, or racism is worse than ableism. systems are good, nor does anyone want to be oppressed. Oppression, exploitation, loss of life, and suffering is bad. Can we stop playing these games of these false narratives of the oppression of women? White supremacy tells us that there is not enough freedom and safety to go around. But freedom is not scarce. There is more available to us than any of us can imagine. Will we dare to imagine that? Number 2 is about solidarity. Our liberation is tied together, and we all need each other to be known and to be seen and to be experienced by one another towards life, flourishing and thriving. This means that historically, we have all been more free because of each other. I'm here because the Black community fought for Chinese people like me to be here. The fight for civil rights in the 1800s was led by Frederick Douglass in the face of the Chinese Exclusion Act. In solidarity, we as a people united together are stronger than the forces of opposition. We are not free until we are all free. We aren't healed until we are all healed. Solidarity is good for all of us. It is right. It is just. We need to create systems of care without endangering one another. The third one that I'm learning is about what's kept me going. The work towards justice and the flourishing of Black lives is urgent and important as lives are being taken every day by police brutality and gun violence. This has required courage and compassion and conviction towards change. When the shootings in Atlanta happened at the spa, where 6 Asian American women were killed, I remember looking for people physically present in this city of Santa Cruz to help me process my trauma and grief with the whole thing. I didn't have that many close by, except for virtual friends. And so the first thing I did was I scoured a Facebook group to look for Asian Americans online. With the few that I did find, maybe 4 or 5, I made a new Facebook group for us called Asian Americans in the Santa Cruz area. And I organized a tiny group of us to come together to grieve. In 1 week, we collectively organized a vigil for all the victims and their families, which actually took place right here in the same place. There was space to hear from a lineup of Asian American women who shared their experiences of racism in this city. To my surprise, the gift of hundreds of people showed up. More than 50 Asian Americans were here too, and I was like, what? Raise your hand if you're in that group. Shout out to you all. Yeah. As of this morning, the Facebook group is at 140 people. You all, and there's room for so much more. Come and find us if you'd like to connect with the group. Thank you to the Black folks who showed up that day in solidarity. Many of us have been meeting to grieve and process our fear for our families, especially our elders. And we've been talking a lot about how white supremacy permeates our families, our education systems, as there are a lot of young parents that I've talked to whose kids are in the city of Santa Cruz and Scott Valley. We are collecting the stories of our people and seeking to partner with other folks in the city. My friend Akiko will share more of the work we've been doing with the Santa Cruz City Council. Personally, I want to see more of us, non-Black allies, especially those in the church, my white friends and fellow East Asian folks, to learn our histories, to repent of how we've hurt people and perpetuated violence and anti-Blackness and exclusion with our privilege and power. Can we spend and invest our money in places not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others? Can we center the most vulnerable as we enact policy change? Can we practice courage and compassion and teach the children in our lives a better way? Can we challenge our understandings and imagine other ways to pursue community safety? I want to end my time with a liturgy that my pastor, Reverend Erida Kim Eubanks, she's a Korean-American woman. She wrote this the week of the Atlanta shootings in the midst of all of our nation's police brutality and gun violence. It is titled, Against the Glory of Guns, a prayer for the healing of our imagination. And so with these words of lament and grief, give us a sense of hope for our souls in mysterious ways and imagine a better world. If you are a person of faith or of a praying type, I invite you to join me in a posture of petition and hope. And for others, would you just posture yourselves in a way of hope as well on behalf of our nation. Against the glory of guns, a prayer for the healing of our imagination. Creator God, your creation is hurting. Our bodies are pierced by violence. Our land is riddled with bullet shells. Our eyes are unnerved by images of horrified, bloody faces. Our ears are tired of hearing the suspect has been identified. Our hearts are heavy from grieving grandmothers, children, co-workers, and friends. We call this violence senseless, yet know it makes complete sense for who we are and the path we've chosen. So we cry out, how long, O Lord? How long? How long must we see the desecration of what is sacred? Feel the shallowness of thoughts and prayers? See an industry profit off of death? Experience the ruthless defense of metal objects at the expense of human breath and dignity? How long will the glory of guns reign in our land? Heal our imaginations, O God. Help us envision a world in which self-protection isn't needed because communal care is enough. Lone wolves don't exist because we are all seen and known. The right to bear arms is exposed as the right to play God. And bad guys with guns don't exist because all of humanity knows love. As blood is crying out from the ground, help us to heed its cry. Grant us your resurrection power and the coming of a new world, for we are desperate for a better way. Amen.
And she's with the Asian American Pacific Islander Student Union from my alma mater, Santa Cruz High.
Hi everyone, thank you all for gathering here tonight. I am here today because I believe in using my voice and leaving an impact, however big or small. As a teen striving for change, it is really great to see a community create a safe space and promote growth and unity. I am grateful for this opportunity to amplify the voices of my Asian peers and bring discussions from Santa Cruz High's Asian Student Union to a larger crowd. I hope that we can increase the amount of Asian Pacific Islander representation in this town and in the world as a whole. As Asian Americans, our voices are often silenced and our struggles are invalidated since the model minority myth being just as almost white but not close enough. By encouraging us to not get involved, the model minority myth uses the API community as a wedge to divide communities and uphold white supremacy. Because of this, the API and Black communities have had a long history filled with both division and solidarity. Since our struggles are constantly invalidated, some people in our community have turned to comparison as a cry for help. Phrases like, support this like you supported Black Lives Matter have drifted around, comparing the struggles of Asian Americans to that of Black Americans. However, as Asian Americans, we have a different experience. Different doesn't mean harder or easier, it simply means that we all come from different walks of life. We must accept the duality of our experience. The model minority myth invalidates our struggles and allows people to get away with murder, excused by a police chief as having a bad day. At the same time, our experience contains a certain degree of privilege, for we do not face the same systemic racism as our Black peers. The Asian American experience is complicated, with many layers. Similar things have been said on the other end, with a Black viewer of Red Table Talk calling in and saying, I'm supposed to care about Stop Asian Hate? I'm supposed to care about what's happening to Asian people? You're rude, you're disrespectful, and you're racist if you ask me. Before we point fingers and ask, why should we care about these people? They didn't show up for us in the way that we needed them to. Why should I exert myself when I'm not directly impacted by this? We need to stop and think. Doesn't this sound familiar? This is the way that white people have been thinking and treating us for many, many years. This is how white supremacy operates, ignoring the struggles and pain of people of color. Growing up in a world where white supremacy is pervasive and prominent in every corner, it is inevitable that we have all learned and incorporated stereotypes and ideas of white supremacy into our subconscious minds. To truly unite, we must recognize and unlearn these ideas and be conscious of our thoughts. If we understand how much this way of thinking can hurt us, why are we using it to hurt someone else? It is key to the strength and success of both communities that we understand that the Black and Asian experiences in America are unique and not to be compared, yet intertwined and related in many unexpected ways. This is not a time for us to speak over one another. This is not a time for us to stand by idly while watching our peers be attacked and shamed for their identities. For every story of tension and division, there are many stories of solidarity.
The relationship between the Black and Asian communities is much deeper than this bitterness and tension that mainstream media helps push out. We see horrifying news stories that try to divide us more and more every day, but we never learn about the way that Jesse Jackson fought alongside Asian Americans after the murder of Vincent Chin, or the way that Yuri Kochiyama and Malcolm X were allies in their activism. As long as we are divided, we cannot defeat white supremacy. We need to have these difficult conversations, the ones where we feel each other's pain and understand that we are different but choose to stand together. Without addressing the way that white supremacy has infiltrated our subconscious minds and created tension and division, we will only continue to spiral downwards. We are in this fight together, and only together can we win.
Yeah.
Next, we have Akiko Minami.
Derek Chauvin was found guilty of George Floyd's murder on April 20th. Relief for now. The tide is turning, but we still have a long way to go. Hi, my name is Akiko Minami, and I am honored to be here today to speak to you about anti-Asian hate here in Santa Cruz County and the need for solidarity. For those of you who think there is no anti-Asian hate here in Santa Cruz County, you need to think again. It was here years ago and still exists today. In the process of crafting a Santa Cruz City resolution against anti-Asian hate with City Council members and staff, members of the Asian American in the Santa Cruz area collected historical information on how the early Chinese community was treated here in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz was the hub of the anti-Chinese movement in California in the late 1800s and early 1900s, directing racist attacks, discrimination, segregation, and forced relocation against local Chinese Americans. Anti-Chinese racism was championed by many of Santa Cruz's most prominent white citizens, including Duncan McPherson, editor of the Santa Cruz Sentinel, who in 1879, during his long history of anti-Chinese racism, described Chinese Americans in racist and dehumanizing terms. And in February 1886, the Santa Cruz Anti-Chinese Association staged a racist, county-wide torchlight parade down Pacific Avenue involving hundreds of white marchers carrying banners and shouting, "The Chinese must go." As for today, anti-Asian hate may not be as blatant as in San Francisco or New York City, where our elders and community members are being beaten and slashed with knives on the streets in broad daylight. It is definitely happening here in our county. There was a case in Capitola where someone left urine in a plastic cup on an Asian American woman's windshield with anti-Asian slurs. Anti-Asian graffiti has been found on the bathroom walls of the Walgreens in Scotts Valley. This is happening in our own backyard. Thankfully, we're standing up and speaking out. Stand up and speak out. This is what we do, loud and frequently. For many Asian American Pacific Islanders who are taught to keep our heads down and work hard, it is time. Time to say no to the anti-Asian jokes that don't seem so racist. Time to say no to anti-Asian rhetoric around the pandemic, around our political conflicts with China and North Korea. Time to say no to the exoticization of Asian women. Time to demand a place at the table, at work, in our schools, in our community, so our ideas and experiences are represented. And to reach out to our Black, Brown, and Native and Indigenous brothers and sisters and non-binary community members. We need to work together. Against anti-Black racism,
anti-Asian racism, and work towards racial justice. The Black community has a long history of supporting our Asian American Pacific Islander communities. One early example is with James Baldwin and Wong Kim Ark, an 1890s cook in San Francisco's Chinatown. They fought against restrictive Chinese immigration policies and paved the way for birthright citizenship in the United States. Other examples include early 1900s, Black U.S. troops desert to join Filipino independence fighters. In 1969, Black, Asian, and Latinx students at San Francisco State University successfully lead a strike to create the first ever ethnic studies program. In 2006, after Hurricane Katrina, Black and Vietnamese communities in New Orleans protest the use of their community as a makeshift dump site. And in 2020, Black and Asian communities in New York lead a movement to cancel rent, focused on immigrant, undocumented, and homeless communities. Locally, various working groups have brought people of color together to support each other and work for racial justice. One group is the POC Defund Group, which is working towards community-based safety alternatives focusing on the needs of our communities of color, redirecting the funds from the police and investing it in the community. Another is the POC Meditation Sitting Group at Insight Santa Cruz, led by Yasmin McCormick, creating a safe space for self-identified POC, meditation, support, and activism. Some Asian American Pacific Islanders may be afraid to form alliances with the Black community in light of anti-Asian attacks by Black folks. Yes, this has occurred, and this is very sad. But in reality, these attacks are a small percentage of the hate crimes, less than 5%. Our media focuses on these incidents to scare our AAPI communities and keep us separate from the Black community. Lastly, I want to thank the Black community, locally and nationwide, for speaking out and standing up for racial justice, for the Black Lives Matter movement, for holding our police and public institutions accountable, for celebrating our culture and history, for leading the way, and for showing solidarity with the Asian American Pacific Islanders in the past and today. Thank you for reaching out and bringing us all forward on the path of racial justice. We are in this together.
I see you, Akiko. Next up, we have a dance by Omo. Thank you. And more?
Hello, Santa Cruz. My name is Bob Fred. I've been living in Santa Cruz for 20 years. I know a lot of people know me down here. But when you say I come here with my group, with my wife, my friend, and my brother, just to bring a happiness down here. Because I know today, we celebrating. Because today you don't hear no lacrimation, you don't hear no grenade, you don't hear no fighting with the PD. All you do today is celebrating the life of George Floyd. That's why I bring my music down here, just to bring people together. And then I'm glad I'm living in Santa Cruz. This is my house, it's my community. Whatever I can do to put people together, to make people happy, I will do. Thank you for supporting the Black Lives Matter. No matter who you are, white, Asian, whatever you are, we just want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for supporting the Black Lives Matter. We're going to play the drum and then bring happiness to you. Like what you said, today with the people. In Santa Cruz, the whole black organizer in Santa Cruz. Thank you. Don't let your guard down. Keep fighting. Please. Better days are coming ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to say hello to everyone out here. Well, it's so good to be in my community and do what I love. I represent California, Los Angeles, California, and Santa Cruz for 15 years. And I'm going to recite a poem, one of my first published poems that I published with the Resource Center for Nonviolence. So I'm really honored to perform this poem because, you know, this poem represents what's going on. And it's called They're Killing Us, We're Killing Us. And I want us to take a deep breath for every single human being that's not here right now. All right, here we go. They're killing us. When we try to do positive into our communities and best back to where we come from. They're killing us because they don't want us to support ourselves. We're killing us when we don't come together to stand up. They're killing us when they put us in prisons and our minds and body. They're killing us when they put us in prisons and our minds and our body. They're killing us because they don't want us to solve our problems of being black in America. They're killing us when they take our jobs away and make us slave for minimum wages that we can't be a service to our local communities anymore. We're killing us when we don't pay attention to one another and our struggle and our hard times. They're killing us because they don't want us to own our own destiny or our own ways of living. They're killing us because they don't want us to own our own destiny or ways of living. We're killing us when we're on our cell phones all the time, but never using eye contact to communicate. We're killing us when we're on our cell phones all the time, but never using eye contact to communicate. They're killing us because our lives don't matter to have a fair trial or justice that is real. They're killing us because our lives don't matter to have a fair trial or justice that is real. We're killing us because we're not working together to rise everyone up enough. They're killing us with liquor stores, fast food, corporations that are controlling the way we eat. We're killing us with Facebook posts, Instagram posts. We're not out there really making change to better our surrounding. We're killing us with Facebook posts, Instagram posts, but not out there making change to better our surroundings. They're killing us. They're killing us, and they're going to keep on doing it till we wake up and see it for ourselves. We're killing us we're killing us when we don't see the truth in our own hearts. Thank you.
Thank you for that reply. Next up, we have Isabella Bonner.
One year ago today, the world lost another beautiful soul to state-sanctioned violence and white supremacy. The murder of George Floyd created a moment that could not be ignored and resulted in the largest global uprising and movement that the world has ever seen. We saw the largest show of solidarity for Black lives and an absolute rejection of police brutality and state-sanctioned violence across the globe. But George Floyd was not a sacrifice for a movement. George Floyd did not die so that white folks and momentary allies could see racism for the first time. He actually actively fought for his life. George cried out for help. He cried out for his mother. And he let the world know that he couldn't breathe while an officer stayed with his knee on his neck for over 9 minutes. The way that we honor and protect George Floyd and the many Black men and women that see themselves or their loved ones in him is to absolutely dismantle the status quo in any system that enables this behavior, a type of disdain for Black lives. What I ask now is that you don't turn away when the living ask for your help and support. I ask that you open your eyes to the ways in which these systems have their knee on our necks every single day and aren't letting up. We honor George Floyd by continuing to reject and dismantle the systems that allowed him to be murdered in the first place. We honor George Floyd by dismantling the systems that allowed Daunte Wright to be murdered down the street where the trial for Derek Chauvin was being held, as we all held our breath questioning the verdict of a murder we solved. We honor the victims of police and state-sanctioned violence by continuing to stand up to our oppressors, by continuing to reject state violence, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, racism, capitalism, and injustices across the globe. We must continue the momentum. We must remain engaged and aware of what is happening to our brothers and sisters across the world. We must continue to call out, denounce, and dismantle the systems that thrive off our oppression and division. From Colombia to Palestine to Nigeria to India and back to the United States, we must continue to combat racism, state violence, capitalism, and oppression. Our struggles have and will continue to remain interconnected. This is a global movement and fight, and we must care about our neighbors. George Floyd should be alive today, and so should Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, Tamario Smith, Ma'Khia Bryant, Trayvon Martin, and countless others. It's time that we engage in a mindset of love, solidarity, and community with our global network because we are all connected. If there's one thing that 2020 taught us, the year of I Can't Breathe, it's just that. The sooner we come to terms with the intersectionality of it all, the crossroads, the point in the middle that all of our struggles meet and have a common denominator, will we be able to move the needle and implement the necessary revolutionary changes our systems are so desperately calling for. We aren't free until we're all free. Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, Free Palestine. The fight for Black liberation and Black lives is the fight for all of our lives, and so it continues.
to the people. Power to the people. Hello, Santa Cruz. So before I start my piece, I got some thank yous. I want to say thank you to the NAACP of Santa Cruz. I want to say thank you to the Black Kings of Santa Cruz County. I see you. I want to say thank you to the Santa Cruz County Black Coalition of Racial Justice and Equality. And I also would like to thank each and every one of you and you for showing up and standing up for unity. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Bella and Lyrical Eye. And everybody else that got up here and blessed the mic prior to myself. And now my piece. Peace is. One year ago today, with disbelief and dismay, we watched a man murdered. A free man had his life stolen by an overseer. Excuse me, I'm an officer of the law. An officer operating with no regard or value for human life. And then in the aftermath, we waited, and we waited, and we waited for the justice system to serve the American people. Tick-tock, tick-tock, 9 minutes and 29 seconds surely seems like a lifetime or a short forever. Without humanity, there is no justice. Without humanity, there is no justice. Ashe. The game. And so it begins again. Each and every time another black or brown body falls, as they continue to unleash the proverbial fires of hell upon us, until death gives a nigga peace. Until death gives a niggas peace. But the problem is, they don't want us to have any peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. They don't want us to have any peace. To some of them, we're just another piece of property to be used and abused. As our eyes are blinking, our third eye is thinking of a master plan for masses' demise. To them, we are just another piece. Thinking we're property to be used and abused, not human beings or even people, their judgments always become lethal when dealing with the people. People that don't happen to look like them, and then the unjust justice system takes its sweet time while knowing the overseer won't do any time. Is murder still considered a crime? Is murder still considered a crime? Not when it's at the hands of the overseers. And my question is, why do we tread lightly while walking directly into a minefield? A minefield full of landmines. Damn it, man, I can't feel my legs. Was that a bullet or was that shrapnel? Either way, the temple is now damaged, but we never claimed to be indestructible. We're always told to take our time while navigating through the war zone, just attempting to safely get back home. By the way, America has always been a war zone. Today, we, being the delegates of the Black and Brown delegation, have survived the many trials and tribulations, and without hesitation, we're told by the self-proclaimed great nation to move forward from our growing pains of our past and present oppression. From right about now and way back then. Well, today, America, we have some questions, and we need them answered. We need them answered right away. While we're living in a conflicted nation that definitely sees color everywhere, while claiming to be colorblind, where we're constantly on trial, when will the madness cease, America? And why does it still exist today? Take your time to answer. But just simply know this. We're sick and tired of waiting. We are sick and tired of waiting. We want our justice and our freedom right now. Thank you.
Next up, we have Celeste Gutierrez. Community organizer.
Thank you all for being here to the meeting. I'm Celeste Gutierrez, and when I was invited to speak at this event, Tamario Smith was the first person that ran through my mind, and his parents. There's a law enforcement issue here. There's a law enforcement problem here in Santa Cruz County, and it's not being televised or photographed. Tamario died at the hands of the Santa Cruz County Sheriff. There has yet to be a single arrest in Tamario's death. There has yet to be any accountability. When you're incarcerated, you're under the care and protection of the state. Yet that's exactly where Tamario died, because instead of listening to Tamario and providing him with medical care, the sheriffs willingly and knowingly denied him care and urged him to drink water for his pain, which led to him dying. The sheriff's willful negligence led to Tamario's death. The police officer who stood on George's neck willfully ignored his pleas, ignored the pleas of the community members who urged him to move. Now here in Santa Cruz County, I urge the sheriffs and every single law enforcement agency to think about what they are doing. They are upholding the status quo. They are upholding white supremacy. I'm here to urge every single one of you to ask your elected officials from school boards, city council, to board of supervisors, what action steps are they taking to begin dismantling the white supremacy, militaristic society we live in? If anyone tells you it's too complex to dismantle it, ask them why are they spending more time and energy defending white supremacy than dismantling it? You can't be anti-racist and a capitalist, as both racism and capitalism are built on the exploitation of humans.
Right.
We must do everything we can to change this.
Right.
There are people living at an elected office currently in Santa Cruz County who say they are not racist, but their actions say otherwise. Take a look at what people are doing. Words matter, but it's our actions that speak louder. So please continue to ask, what are you doing to dismantle the oppressive white supremacy society we live in that values profit over people? George should have never died, and we cannot allow his death to be in vain, and we cannot allow tomorrow's death to be in vain. They were both human beings whose lives were ended by the state. Law enforcement in both cases acted as jury and executioner. In both cases, law enforcement imposed the death penalty. In both cases, George and Tamario's due process rights were violated. In both cases, 2 human beings were killed by the police. I ask you to join us in asking every single elected official in the county and asking the sheriffs to allow for an independent investigator into Tamario's death and the officers involved in his death to be held accountable. A united community is a safe community. We don't need officers patrolling the streets for us to be safe. We need fairness, justice, and transparency. Thank you.
Next up, we have Beth Nova.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Feeling out there?
Yeah, that's fair.
My name is Makana. I've lived in Santa Cruz for 10 years now. I go by Macnova, is my artist name. And the song I'm going to share with you is called Butterfly with Fangs. And it was definitely inspired out of the protests that came after George Floyd's death. And I'm guessing you can kind of infer what it means, but I still feel like saying that, yeah. Butterfly with Fangs for me is just acknowledging my beauty, my colors, my vulnerability, and the delicacy of human life. At the same time, fangs, like the fierceness of choosing to live a full life and to say no to the things that don't support that.
Amen.
And in the song, I'm gonna say, make the melanin pop. I just want you guys to know exactly what I was saying because I'm gonna invite you in to join me on that. Are you guys ready? Yes, let's turn it up. Let's get it up. Louder. Can we get louder than that? Brushing my teeth, feeling the rhythm of the city, not knowing it's me. Finding my feet on the patio rooftop. Vitamin D, Ultra V, that's me, make the melanin pop. Climbing the tree, fist to the sky, in the midst of the protest march. No, this flow won't stop. O-U-T, the block. Hope you call the cops. Break the stasis, 911 just face it. We calling you out, butterfly with fangs. Heaven is a place, ain't nothing to fuck with. Who's taking my veins? Butterfly with fangs, heaven is a place, ain't nothing to fuck with. Who's taking my veins? If you black and man in black, catching me up, put them on blast. You're a man in black, my heart intact, like new Stacy's perpetual black reflection is trapped, just like sunshine. Hey, pop, pop, blow, blow that black whistle, whittle them down, whistle lower, covertly overturn them right in their tracks. Is a broken down coaster, a magnifying glasses. It's fire, it's focus. It's time to open up your mouth, the city's burning. And I'm the furnace, not Turner, I'm a servant. I
see the mountaintop. It's a burden, yeah, we go and learning how. It's time to turn. It's time to open up your mouth. The city's burning, and I'm the furnace now. Turner on the sermon. I see the mountaintop. It's a burden, yeah, we go and learning how. Nothing to fuck with. Wu-Tang in my veins, you know. Ain't nothing to fuck with. Wu-Tang in my veins.
Okay, next up we have
Reverend Deborah.
Reverend Deborah. Thank you. Can you believe it? How long have I known you, Reverend Deborah? And I just wait on your hand. Reverend Deborah.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Being my yellow, a lot of people told me their own way that my melanin needs to pop a little more. But it's all good. I want to say thank you to all of my brothers and sisters that have already spoken today. They essentially said it all. I really don't want to be redundant. But I want to give thanks also to the NAACP and to all of the organizers. And there are one or two things that I want to share at a level that's uncharacteristically Reverend Deborah. But I'm exhausted. I'm just exhausted. And I know most of the black folks that I know, when we talk about this stuff right now, to have any witnesses in the house, we're just exhausted. So exhausted, though, that we don't even have the luxury and the privilege of being tired.
That's right.
Exhausted, but there's no time to be tired. I love all my white brothers and sisters, I really do. But if I hear one more person say, I don't see color, I'm gonna scream. They're gonna have to arrest me. If I hear one more person say, well, you know, everybody's just an individual. Let me give you a news flash. With the criminal justice system and black folks, there's no such thing as an individual. Now, what I'm about to say may be really hard, but a picture paints 1,000 words. We are like roaches and rodents. Let me tell you what I mean. Nobody says we have a roach. You may see a roach, but if you see a roach, we have roaches. Because the moment you see one roach, you know he got cousins and brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles and woo! There's no such thing as a roach. We're like rodents. They set the trap. Gotcha. Got one. That may not be the mouse that chewed through your car cable. That may not be the mouse that left all those droppings over there. That mouse may have just been passing through for the first time, but you're still glorified. I got you. Because one of y'all needed to pay for this. And it didn't matter that you weren't the guilty one. Somebody needed to pay, and I got you because you were gonna do something. Roaches and rodents. That's how we get treated in the criminal justice system. It may not be that extreme out in the world, but I am telling you now, this idea of being an individual, we don't have that luxury. I was just talking to a friend today. Anytime there's a mass shooting or something, the first thing black folks do is call each other and go, "Good girl, I hope it ain't somebody black." Because you know we're going to be held accountable for all of it. Do I have a witness in the house? It's tiring. And it's exhausting knowing that your every move is going to be judged. And that everybody else is going to pay the price for whatever it is that you do. It's kind of the Obama syndrome, where you got to be better than better to be considered half as good. And it's exhausting. I don't know how many names. When I saw the footage recently of Ronald Green, what do? It's just so many. When I heard that third guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin, I don't know what the rest of you did. I lost it. I don't mean like just a little bitty boo-hoo. I wailed. There was something that was so deep and painful in me, I didn't even know it was there. And I was on a Zoom call. But it didn't matter. And I knew that what I was crying for, people say, well, you know, well, were you happy to it? It was post-traumatic stress. And when I could talk, all I could get out was, it's the first time. It's the first time. It's the first time in the whole nation's history that the police got convicted of killing us. It's the first time. It's the first time. It's 2021. That's all I could get out. That's all I could get out. But you know what? As horrified as I have been with all of the killings that are going on in the street, you know what scares me more right now? Watching what happened at the Capitol. If that had been black folks, we wouldn't have made it to the steps. We'd have been so dead.
Right.
We'd have never sauntered out with souvenirs. It wouldn't have taken months to find us. We'd have been locked up that night. And we'd have still been in there. And you know I'm telling the truth. But I tell you why this scares me so much, and why we all need to be concerned. What we witnessed there, I didn't think was possible. The Confederate flag had never made it inside the Capitol before. The complicity, the silence, the collusion, I never thought it was possible. I always thought that if white folk got treated anyway near how black folk got treated, you'd see the light. The mobs were in there. And we have all of these lawmakers telling a story about they were just tourists. The police that we're afraid of, 130 of them went to the hospital and remained. And you know what? This silence, this collusion, this rewriting of history, this is dangerous. White supremacy hurts white people too. White supremacy is not just about people of color against white people. The ante has been upped. Democracy itself is on the line. Democracy itself is on the line. The NAACP, since its inception, has been fighting for voting rights. What is happening now to strip up of our voting rights is one of the most dangerous things that we have ever seen. We cannot, we must not let it happen. And we must not let it happen. The only way policing changes at the local level. You hear me? There's like 18,000 police departments in the United States. It happens at the local level. These masks that we're wearing, they might as well be muzzles that people are trying to put on our mouths to silence us so that we cannot speak up, so that we do not have power. They would be glad for us to do nothing but just march in the streets. And I know I'm being a little long-winded, but I got to just break like one or two more things down here. That when what we're seeing now happening with the voting rights, I want to make it perfectly clear. This electoral college system that we have, it's a legacy of slavery. It's a legacy of the way that we counted people and who we gave power to. Now, I know a lot of you have heard that in the Constitution, and I'm talking early on, like in Article 1, Section 2 kind of thing, in the beginning, that black folks are listed as 3/5 of a person. And that's offensive, because we feel like we got reduced. Newsflash. 3/5 of a person was an upgrade. 3/5 of a person was an upgrade. And here's how the upgrade went. We were property. We weren't even persons. So one, to be considered as a person, the Constitution was too slimy to just name slavery out and out. And what it says in this particular clause is, how are we going to do taxation and representation? How are we going to create the census? How will we count people? It says very specifically, those who were native born, 0, zippo, because they are not considered citizens, they were not going to be taxed, and they were not going to get any representatives. People who are free and who are going to be free, talking about the white people who were indentured servants, they got one vote, one representative. Then it says all other persons 3/5. All other persons 3/5, which is an acknowledgement right there that there are some persons that are not free and who are never going to be free. But here's what happened that's so insidious and slimy, and how it connects with today, is that all of those states that were slave states got to include 3/5 of all the slave population in their getting representatives in Congress. So if you were a white dude like Thomas Jefferson that had 200 slaves, your vote wasn't just one. Your vote was like pushing 150. You paid for them, and that was the trade-off. This way we compromised our values to try to create, quote unquote, like the Union. We are still doing it. And what was insidious about it is that they got the power, they got the money for the black bodies who did not have the right to vote. The same thing is happening now with the gerrymandering and the districting and trying to get more representation off of our bodies, but did not give us the voice. It is as old as when the Constitution first got started. We cannot, we must not let this happen. The knee that was on George Floyd, the knee that's been on all these black bodies in the street, that knee is on our democracy. That knee is on us, and we don't have time. There's going to be elections next year, 2022. We must put up a wall. We must vote. We must vote like our lives depend on it. We must vote like the world is depending upon us. I don't care where you are. You got brothers, you got sisters, you got aunties and uncles and cousins. You have people who live all over this nation. Encourage them. Don't wait until it's election time, because voting is not something that you just up and decide to do overnight. I don't want to hear any more young people questioning whether their vote matters. Trump's not in office because of the vote, and baby, that matters. But it's a shoestring report. I know I'm preaching at you, but I'm a preacher. We cannot simply be concerned about police injustice. We have to be concerned about the larger political system. And I know this is going to sound really hard. My dad, if he was still alive, he'd be 99 years old this July. Except for the war, he lived his entire life in the Los Angeles area, born and raised in Compton. He served in World War II, military police in Paris and Algiers. And there was something that he would say to my brother and me like clockwork, maybe twice a year, for as long as I can remember. He would look us deep in the face and point his finger at us and just say these words: remember, Hitler was elected. It seemed like such an extraneous piece of information at the time. And now I know what my dad was trying to tell us. Now I know what my dad was trying to tell us. I couldn't understand how Nazi Germany happened. I couldn't understand how fascism happened. I couldn't understand it, but now I'm looking at it with my eyes. Not here. Not on our watch.
Thank you so much for coming and being together on this day, this solemn day. But yet, we commemorate lest we forget. And we do not want to forget. We will never forget. That video is seared, at least in my conscience. But I'm not going to say all that I had to say, planned to say, because I'm cold.
We gotta get us dancing again.
But I do want to leave you with two things. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody from Sarah to Reverend Deborah. Your friend, so you know I love you. Whenever I call, she's right there. Thank you all for being out here. Thank you to everyone who helped plan this event. It was a lot of work, the last minute, but we pulled it together. So everybody in the NAACP and the Black Coalition, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming out. I just want to leave two things with you. Number one, the reason that we're here is because our work is not done. We have a long way to go. That conviction of Chauvin was just the first step. As I said to one of the news reporters, one of my cohorts said, that was just one brick in a very long road that we have to build and travel. The work is not done. We cannot be complacent. We cannot settle back in our comfortable lives. We have to move the work forward. We have to move the work forward.
Woohoo! Yes, we do.
We cannot stop. We cannot stop until we get some radical change. Not only in policing, as Reverend Deborah alluded to, but in housing, in education, employment, all of it. We have to see change. People ask, what can I do? We have to stay in the courts and in the streets. There's legislation that needs to be passed. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act needs to be passed. We need to get on the phone or email or whatever and contact our elected officials and say, get this done. It's not perfect, but it's the first step.
Yes.
We also need to do some cleaning up on the local level. Is Felicia Smith here? I thought I saw her earlier.
She left already.
Okay, Tamario Smith's mother. We need justice. We're seeking justice for Tamario Smith. We can't stop until we get it. There was a bill that was passed in the fall of last year, AB 1185. And it went into effect in January of this year. AB 1185 gives the counties the authority to institute a sheriff's oversight commission with the position of an inspector general. And we can build this oversight commission to have some teeth. That's what we need. We will have a forum. We'll have a forum on AB 1185 and the need to bring that commission here on June 30th. So I'll be looking for all of you to be a part of that conversation and then move this forward so that we can get a commission here in Santa Cruz. Thank you again for being out. We have to continue the work. And our board is going to
Oh my goodness, my brother, it is so good to see you, man. Oh, man. I'm still here, man. Hey, I'm still here. Can I give you a hug? How you doing?